Superhot has joined with Hades out on the final frontier, and it calls itself Enter the Chronosphere, put together by developer Effort Star. If that perks your ears up, then listen up because there's a lot for you here, all sewn up with a vibrant neon bow. The game centers on the titular chronospheres, planet-sized, planet eaters that collapse reality around inhabited planets, assimilating the civilizations on them and incorporating their likenesses to populate their labyrinthine mazes. It's sort of like Dungeon Crawler Carl, if you're familiar, maybe with a spritz of Titan AE. Extra points for anybody who's seen that. Nobody totally understands the nature of these chronospheres or what their goals are, if any. What is known is that they appear in a mysterious and unknown corridor of the galaxy known as the Glimmering Way, and that explorers can dive into the chronospheres and gather resources to help them as they journey further and further down, fighting off enemies along the way. Again, enemies who were assimilated when their original worlds were eaten. It's pretty heavy when you think about it. One of those diving explorers is Marcia, last remaining human in the wake of Earth getting consumed by one of these chronospheres. She is remarkably well adjusted. Another member of the crew is Urtar, or Urtar, I've only ever read it. He's a giant bear, which is a fact that ends up being a pretty funny and disarmingly interesting conversation piece later on. And then there's Lillipilly, from a species analogous to lizards. Her claim to fame is possibly being the least disciplined and carefree bounty hunter I've ever seen. And then Lei rounds it out. She's blue and she's a scientist, and is kind of the older sister of the crew. I'll come back to these folks later. I mentioned Superhot and Hades off the top, and I meant it. Gameplay in Enter the Chronosphere flows in turns. Everything and everyone moves when you do. It may feel like a gimmick early on, but go down just a few levels and you'll find out just how much of a difference this makes. This is a roguelike that's also a bullet hell. That cocktail belies the true nature of the game. It's strategic and considered, not twitchy and sweaty. That is, if you choose to play so. I found myself sitting there, surrounded on all sides as one does by bullets, lasers, grenades waiting to go off, mini nukes in midair, playing moves out in my head like a chess player. Usually, when things look impossible in this game, there is at least one way to get out of a checkmate, and finding that one way is incredibly satisfying. Weapons not only have unique attacks, but often impact how you move when using them. So you might have an assault weapon that pushes you backwards a little bit, but then quick fire some dual pistols that make you jump to the left, but then switch back to the assault weapon and so forth. Maybe you have an ability that repels projectiles and enemies away from you. Do you use that, or do you take a chance on just jumping out of the way, since that ability has a 2-turn cooldown and there's a couple of guys with mini nukes right over there? And hey, that projectile over there is about to bounce off the wall next to you. If you can lure an enemy to follow you that away, maybe they'll run smack into it. Things get chaotic fast. The things to keep track of and anticipate pile on. And when I was on the ropes, I had to consciously fight my reflexes and keep a level head. Consider the field. It's pretty cool, and I like any game that encourages me to question my instincts. That said, I initially did clear out every level of its loot, weapons, mods, gear, whatever, but then I reached a point where I decided to switch up my tactic just for fun, and I fell back on dashing straight to each level's exit, more like, speed chess. And you know what? No pun intended, but I had a blast both ways. This quicker playstyle was a lot more frenetic, but no less rewarding. If your brain wants a strategic exercise, you'll be just as at home as someone who wants the feeling of getting dropped into a war zone scrambling for their life. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention another wrinkle the game throws at you, which is instability. See, some weapons and gear come with a chance of generating instability that grants mutations to some enemies upon pickup. That harkens back to the Chronosphere's ability to collapse reality. Some mutations grant enemies more health, others make them explode when they die, and so on and so forth. You can stack this instability, these mutations, pretty quick if you spring for the really good gear, some of which can counteract certain mutations, so you can turn dicey situations around if you play your cards right. This game, much like the player dodging a bullet storm by the skin of their teeth, makes total use of a color palette that is pretty risky and would have felt like way too much in anybody else's hands, I think. And as far as color schemes go, I've seen countless examples where artists have made the mistake of conflating busy with haphazard. And it's a strong testament that my eyes never got tired looking at this game. The art style is bold, but not overly brash or loud, as you can see. It complements the game's tone, which is playful and fun despite the copious amounts of tragedy that makes up the game's foundation. This isn't an artist throwing colors at the wall, a lot of thought went into it. Obviously, level design is incredibly important to any game in this genre with procedurally generated levels. Each one is configured like a maze with certain levels of destructibility baked in just to shake things up. Maybe you need to blow your way out the side door. Maybe an enemy's blowing it up to get to you. You know, that stuff. Usually your dilemma is, do you make for the exit while you can? Remember, there are dozens and dozens of rounds and explosives flying all around you. Or do you take the risk and grab what you can, hoping something you grab could help you further down, because you don't know what's down there. Every click of the mouse can be the difference between a successful run and an early death. Yes, I deliberately said click of the mouse right then. As of the time of writing, there is no controller support yet. Usually that would be a bummer for me because, I massively prefer controllers, but the keyboard and mouse layout was intuitive and approachable, and it was not an obstacle to my enjoyment in any way. Controller enthusiasts, take note. Writing majors, take note. This game is not masquerading as a narrative-focused, choice-based, story-driven RPG, but it packs a lot more lore than I was expecting, which was a very pleasant surprise. It even has a codex, which should tell you something. Now, Mass Effect this is not, but I came away thinking I really wouldn't mind a novel or a comic based in this world. A novel or comic featuring characters like these. Like the risky but successful art direction, these characters could easily run the risk of becoming grating in anyone else's hands. We see it happen all the time, but as intended, our shipmates come across as slightly quirky friends who have known each other for a long time. Now this swipe here may feel uncalled for, but I got the impression that the vibe here was what Concord was going for. These folks feel heightened but not stretched so far as to be fake or, dumb. And I actually think it's to the game's benefit that it's not voiced, because I have a theory that a lot of bad writing in the industry is actually misguided acting. And I wouldn't want to take the chance of putting these characters in a voice actor's hands, as good as they are. Point is, I looked forward to seeing the crew in between each run, even if the encounters are a little short and clipped. Make no mistake, the runs are the focal point of the game, and this is not a friend simulator, but still, the context these characters give to the proceedings is very much appreciated. The soundtrack is another high point with a delightfully synthy score that is always supportive but not intrusive. Sometimes composers can get a little excited and overdo it. A little bit of synth goes a long way. But again, it's used wonderfully here, and parts of it will definitely be on my study playlist. Very commendable. As far as the technical performance went, it was incredibly stable overall. No crashes, but I did have a couple of freezes that lasted like half a dozen seconds. Not enough to impact my score really, but I figured I would do my due diligence and include it just so you know. And at the time of review, there weren't very many options as far as accessibility goes, which is kind of surprising, considering I could see some folks having some issues with the game's color scheme. As far as what you can change, it's pretty standard, resolution, FPS limit, volume, rebind keys, which is nice. Language, screen shake. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not a ton to tinker with. So with all that behind us, what am I trying to say? In the world of game reviews, some games you play just to do your duty. Other games combine fun with work. This was the latter. Enter the Chronosphere takes an addictive and really just fun gameplay hook and strengthens it with a deep, stylish world with characters I wouldn't mind sharing a dinner with. If you're not at all into roguelikes, it's doubtful this game will change your mind, but it does bring with it a few extra nice things that will refresh the genre for you if you've been looking for something new in the space. For all these reasons, Enter the Chronosphere handily earns a silver lamp of approval from me. Whether you're planning to meticulously plan every step, or screech through bullets like a bat who just snorted a pile of powdered sugar, this game is well worth treading.